So we'll move on to the Ballymore Novices Hurdle. This is a race that I was talking to Daryl before we started recording, just saying that it's nice that the Novice Hurdles this year are so open potentially at this point. And there are a few horses you can make a case for without being able to completely crab loads of them. My small stance on it was, thought Stage Start was fairly good in the challenge, to be honest with you, but I'd be disappointed if he was good enough to go and win at Ballymore. If he did, I think it'd be a fairly weak Ballymore. Journey With Me was the obvious one. I mentioned him a few weeks back. He had an entry in a Bob Ollinger race, didn't run in it, ran recently. Obvious shortener, and he's gone like short enough in here. I don't know. You'd need to see more from him. Sir Gerhard, like as much as we crabbed him in the Supreme, and Jamie touched on it to begin with, he was going to, where you'd fancy him at Cheltenham would be over 2.5 or over a trip. I don't think he's going to go in the Supreme. I think their plan was to go for this race in the first instance anyway, so I think they'd still do that. So the 7-1 about him for this race compared to the 5 to the Supreme is slightly more attractive, but didn't do a lot for me. We had the Lauder of Nath the other day where Ginto ran in it. Gordon's comments after it was semi-interesting because he basically said he was going to go to the Albert Bartlett before he did what he did today, which now makes me think that he's shown a bit more speed and he's going to run him in this sort of race. I liked Hollow Games when we talked about horses for like really long-term anti-post, although I wasn't doing it. But I hate Hollow Games for an Albert Bartlett profile. He's had too many bumper runs. Like I can't see him doing it. And I don't know where they'll go with Ginto. I don't know what they'll do with his plans, whether they will end up going Albert Bartlett or not. But I'd prefer to see Hollow Games running this, although I don't think he'd be good enough to win it. I think it does look like crazily wide open, but there wouldn't be anything at this point that I'd be too bullish to really fancy, although I will give you a selection at the end of it. So, Jamie, we'll start with you before you get any more alcohol into you. What do you fancy for the Ballymore?
I think Ginto was really impressive yesterday. He was impressive. Like the form with Eric Bloodaxe is gonna, like, you go back to the form of Fernie Hollow. Eric Bloodaxe beat Fernie Hollow, like, do you know what I mean? Journey With Me, like, is Kilcrut's form good enough to beat? Like, Kilcrut was a bad third that day, like, you know, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. Stage Start, is it like, well, you know, we're having the hot ball the last day about the Shadow winner, like, you know, is Shadow winner ever going to win a Ballymore?
Nope.
No, it's not. So for me, it's my selection in the race is going to be Dysart Dynamo. I really like Dysart Dynamo. Won a Cork last day. I think it needs further. You said about the Supreme last day. I think it needs further, and the slower, like, you know yourself, the Ballymore, to go slow at the start before they come down the hill. After that, it's not, like, I don't know, to be honest with you. If I was selection the race, it's Ginto, because the fact of the matter is Ginto beat a good field last day. And look, I think it's Ginto for me. Let's be honest with you.
Yeah, fair enough. And I get what you're saying with Dysart Dynamo. And like, he is short for this race than he is for the Supreme. And like I said, a few people are saying it. And we talked about lots of horses that run in the Supreme that you could look at them like. York Hill was favourite for the Supreme before he ran in the Ballymore. Envoy at one point when Gordon was talking about it, when they did the Betfair preview, went bloody favourite for the Supreme. You look at the likes of like Simon Sig wins it, goes and win an arc. We get Forhin, goes and wins it and goes and win a champion hurdle. Like, it is a quick race. Although there's only 3 furlongs between this and the Albert Bartlett, it isn't a plodder's race by any like stretch of the imagination. But good you've gone for Ginto, not Dysart Dynamo. Dazzler, where do you see it?
I thought it was very interesting. I thought Ginto, that form definitely sets a stand. Of course it does. He'll need to do it again for me. I wasn't overly convinced by his action, to be honest. When he's under pressure, he's kind of like he's not like an Iron Maximus, but he's not far away from that, what he's doing with the front of his legs. He's not striding out 1-2. He's sort of striding with both legs. So I don't know. He's obviously got some engine, hasn't he? I quite like the performance of Jerry Colon over at Down Royal. I thought he could have a bit of a say. He obviously comes from a completely different parish to those at the top of the market, but he's definitely a nice horse. I thought that performance has been underestimated a little bit at Down Royal. I thought he had tons in hand at the finish. I thought he travelled well. I thought he jumped nicely. And I thought he had a bit of class about him as well. That was his first start in the hurdles, first start for 300 odd days off the track. He recorded an RPR of 137 in easy style. I don't think it's going to take a lot more than that on his next start to put him right in the frame for this sort of race. Obviously, a lot of these are going to be entered in both of the stay and novice races, aren't they? In the Bartlett and in this Ballymore. Stage Star is interesting. He had a good ton in hand at the finish of that shallow hurdle. That shallow hurdle wasn't that strong. I liked a horse in there called Party Business. That was the second last or something, or the last. He looked like he was going to play a hand, but Stage Star, once he gets going, he pulls well clear. You know, he's quite an imposing beast. He's quite grubbing on me, actually, this horse. I think he's got loads more to come. He could play a hand in this, and I know we're used to saying like shallow hurdle winners are not going to win a Ballymore or whatever. You know, the British have been poor, and you know they're not that great. But I think, I mean, he's definitely leading the charge for the British in this race. I think he could be very, very smart. He's a big unit, so he's probably going to be better at the fences. So maybe, you know, this might come too early on in his career, and how he's going to handle a track like Cheltenham. I don't really like it when these horses continue to run at the same tracks, like at Newbury. Like, I'm not a massive fan of really of Constitution Hill going to back to Sandown. I'd like to see him go somewhere else. He's obviously ended up in here as well. I don't think he'll go here. He'll definitely go for the Supreme, I would have thought. Stage Star does interest me quite a bit, but of the Irish contingent, I wouldn't be afraid of taking on Ginto. I mean, that law is a nice run. You would expect him to be right on top of the market, but he's not Journey with Mears. That doesn't really make sense to me.
No.
I don't know. I think while he was impressive, and a lot of people on social media were impressed with Ginto, I don't think he's impressed many bookmakers. And I don't know. I think he could be the horse that, you know, gets talked up quite a bit before the festival and just disappoints or gets beat. I can see that sort of happening. There'll be one or two to come out of the woodwork, and head towards the top of his market. Jerry Colomb could be one of those. He's a double figure price at around 14, so I'll probably have a punt on him. Like I said, I have backed Mighty Potter as well for this, because I do think this sort of test will definitely suit him. I think like, you know, when you mentioned earlier, Jamie, about his head's going one way and Jack Kennedy's going the other. I think it's because he's under pressure and he's just green as grass. He didn't know what he was doing. After the line in that race, it took him an age to pull up, an absolute age to pull up. I think the RTE interviewer went down to interview him and she said she never had to go this far to interview someone on a horse. So I definitely think he's got staying power. He's not going to spend the rest of his life at 2 miles, that's for sure. So I think he's a very, very nice horse. I have heard that the owner's got some money on him for the Supreme, which would obviously be a worry. But that's where I'm looking at the moment. Mighty Potter, I've already backed. I think Jerry Clum, I'm probably going to have a bet on him today. And the other one I mentioned, obviously, is Classic Getaway as well, because we don't know what's going to happen with him. And he was the joint most expensive point-to-point horse, if I'm right in saying that. Is that right? Bought the sales ever. So, you know, I'm very surprised he's in at around a big price of 16 to 1. I'm surprised they're not being too conservative with him. It might be worth backing him at 16 before he runs on Thursday, just on the off chance that he's as decent as his price tag suggests he is. So I do think there's other horses outside of the likes of Ginto. So many times every year, I mean, I've made the same mistake again this year, really. I backed my mate Mozzie for the Supreme. Like, I backed too early. And I still think for this race, we're in the infant stages of it developing in terms of a market forming. So I think you could back a couple 16s and hope they are impressive. Jerry Colomb, Classic Getaway, Mighty Potter. But it's another wide open race, Dave. I'll give you a selection for it. I'll tell you what. I really like Mighty Potter. Reminded me of Envoy Allen in the Royal Bond. Honestly, the way he was in his novice season. So I'm going to stick with Mighty Potter because I do like him. I hope he goes in.
Nice. Yeah, I like Mighty Potter as well, like as a profile horse for any of the novices. Like, he's the sort of horse that he's shown that he's got this 2 mile speed. I bang on about it loads for like an Albert Bartlett type horse. I want to see him at the 2 mile pace. He's never going to go that far in trip, but he is half brother to French Dynamite that ended up running over 3 miles. So like, I would think that a step up in trip would suit him better than running the Supreme, regardless of whether the owner's got some cash on him or not. The Classic Getaway obviously is important to mention it because, like you say, runs Thursday, will not be 16 to 1 after he goes and wins that, and is probably going to go and dot up in that. Stage start, like I know we poo-pooed the challenge, didn't we? Saying that they're not going to go and win it, but we know there's good horses in there, and they do often feature in a Ballymore. I was really impressed with how professional Stage Star was throughout the race. Like when you just watch a horse race and you see one horse in a race, even after a third, and you're like, that's so much better than these other horses. Like they just everything, the action, how good they are, how they respond. He looks like a professional horse, and that's going to get him a long way. But then you get these raw ones, like you touch about, with Mighty Potter maybe being a bit green and things like that. Stage Star is doing everything right and winning nicely, which is good. He's going and winning races. But sometimes you want those horses that maybe have done it a bit dirty, or like they've got bundles more to come. So I think Stage Star probably does have more to come. But then I'm slightly concerned that, even from the Nichols comments, things like that they never expected him to be quite this good. And all of a sudden he's just done it now. Maybe he's not going to progress any further for the rest of the season, maybe.
Yeah, quite possibly so. I don't know though. Do you remember last year when Brave Man's Game won the Cheltenham, and that final furlong of what he did in his race, and he just pulled, didn't he? He just went again, and you just thought, Christ, got loads left. It was a very, very similar performance.
Yeah.
They are. It's not just the routes they've taken. It's a very, very similar visual performance. He's ran fairly decent time figures in the 140s already, and he's doing it with absolute ease. The thing that worries me is it's an Owners Group horse, and it's from the Paul Nicholls yard. And that's no disrespect to Paul Nicholls, because I think he's obviously a fantastic trainer and he dominates Britain. But this is the best of the best, and there is very little depth in any of the divisions in Britain. So you can get a sort of false sense of security about how good a horse is. Like you say, you're watching him in that race and he's miles better than those horses. But those horses really shouldn't be in a great race, in my opinion. No, like for example, Lossy Mouth. Right, I made a huge mistake. I was backing some crap horses the other week. I ended up putting that Lossy Mouth as the likely winner of the race, and I couldn't believe I did it really, because Lossy Mouth won a handicap of 121. Now, we did it in a good time figure, but he won a handicap in a bog off 121. And all of a sudden, he's running up against Stage Star, and on his handicap debut of 121, they put a £7 claim on him as well. So, the level of form that he's beaten is not great, but you can tell he's a standout horse. He's just running against the wrong horses, so I wouldn't knock him too much on his form, you know what I mean? But we'll probably see the best of him when he's in this sort of race.
Yeah, I agree. And it's even worse than that for Lossy Mouth. It was 117, because our mate Aaron told me that he fancied that day, and my dad needed Grange Clare Glory that came second for a massive, massive Canadian. And then obviously he went and won a trio after that, didn't he? Right, so you've given us a selection already. You said
White Bob.
Okay. Jamie, you've said
if he say Mighty Potter, it's 3 Strike Life for me. The fact of the matter is that I think 3 Strike Life would have beaten him that day.
He'd never get near him.
What?
Never get near him.
That's 2 miles there. 2.5 miles. The Mighty Potter beat 3 Strike Life over 2.5 miles.
Oh, 100%.
No. Look, I know what you're saying, that the fact of the matter is it was 2 miles last day, but Mighty Power is going to run the Supreme. So 3 Strike Life for me is going to run the Ballymore.
Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I think Mighty Potter should be running the Ballymore. Absolutely, I do. 100%.
Conano, go back in the Royal Bond, right? It was a slowly run race, and obviously I'm talking through ownership here, because I thought my horse should have run in the Royal Bond, because we beat Farrell, and Farrell was third, and we beat Farrell in the stud by 11 lengths, right? We were very disappointed because obviously I'm not going to talk about the trainer, right? But the fact of the matter is, right, Mighty Potter was a slow run race, and I can't remember the name of the William Monitors. Would you back that horse to win the Mayor's Novice? Obviously you won't. It was such a slow run race, right, that Mighty Potter then was third, right? And all of a sudden then they ran the race again, right? Grangy obviously is a horse that is fair for the Mayor's Novice. Grangy was third. 3 Strike Life was second and got stopped in the run every time. If 3 Strike Life didn't batter the second last and got the run of the race, who would have won the race?
Well, you could say the same thing about Mighty Potter, where he stumbled early on in the race, and then he had Largy debut throughout the whole of that race, jumping out to his right.
I know, yeah. I agree.
Losing ground there. So there's bits and pieces of both. In terms of the Royal Bond, he was held up at the rear of the field, and my goodness me, that he was finishing powerfully despite having a slowly run race. And a lot of people have taken that as a strongly run Supreme suit. I don't think it will, because in a strongly run Supreme, he's going to have to be given a prominent ride. Because if he gets stuck in a pocket, he's not going to be able to get out. If he's going to get a similar scenario as the Royal Bond, not everyone just assumes that the Supreme is going to be an absolute tearaway. It's not always the case. And if that's not the case for Mighty Potter, he's going to be in trouble. I think that he definitely wants to step up and trip. I think that I thought he was very, very green under pressure inside after the last when Free Strike Life was coming up beside him. That's why he didn't know where to put his head, where to go. But I watched it about 3 or 4 times because I had the exact same opinion as you, where I thought that Free Strike Life was the one to take out of the race. But I just felt like if he would have got to the head of, or the quarters of Mighty Pie, he would have pulled out more. You could probably tell that by the way how far it took him to pull him up at the finish. He had tons left in hand. I just think that his lack of pace is the reason why Free Strike Life got as close as he did to him, and therefore that's why I think going up in trip, I think he'll be a much better horse. I mean, Jack Kennedy was absolutely raving about him after the race. Did you see it? You saw the interview with him after the race. He was absolutely raving about him, saying how good of a horse this is. He's just a big baby. He's still learning. He had no clue what he was doing. I think he's got tons more to come. I might be going over the top, but I do think I think it's a wide open race, Ballymore, and I think he's got every chance in here. Whereas I think the Supreme, there could be some real absolute superstars in there, and that includes John Bond. John Bond could be an absolute superstar. Constitution Hill could be a superstar, and these are, or Constitution Hill for a fact is not a slow horse. He's going to have plenty of boot. And I can just see Mighty Potter running into Supreme and getting outpaced, losing it, making a slight mistake at hurdle, losing his position, trying to get back on and running on strongly, and everyone going, he should have gone to Ballymore. That's just my opinion of it. But what will happen will happen. I don't know. I think I like him for this race. I mean, we could have been having a completely different discussion after Thursday when Classic Getaway goes and absolutely hoses up on the bridle, taking a pull. You know what I mean? And he gets cut into 6-1 fab for the race. So I think it's wide open. Jinto sets the standard. I'm going to keep the faith of Mighty Potter. I hope I'm right. If he goes to Supreme, so be it. I'm going to back Classic Getaway actually, and Jerry Kalov now at double figure prices. Just give me another interest as a bit of an insurance policy.
Yeah, don't blame me, mate. And the beauty of this race is we talked about, I said right at the beginning, how competitive these novice hurdles are and how exciting it is about it. This is the good thing to talk about. We can have more than one horse on our radar at these points. One that I'm just going to throw in, and I'm doing this right at the end because I know you two are just going to give me a load of abuse, so I'm just going to try and do it quickly. My eye was behind Constitution Hill, right? My eye needs really bad ground. Whether he runs in the Tolworth or not on Saturday, I don't 100% know, but bad ground in a Tolworth equals Ballymore winner as far as I'm concerned if he runs well. Not saying my eye is going to beat Constitution Hill, but he's a 40-1 poke. If it was soft ground at Cheltenham or worse, my eye would not be a 40-1 poke, but trained by Harry Fry is too scared to even run to the shop let alone run his horses. So whether we'll go or not, I think he's in a third price at 40s. Again, just thinking he's a 40-1 poke bet 365. You get like the option for a cash out, didn't you? I just maybe want to have him on a bet slip somewhere, seeing if the ground starts to go soft, because he'll be the sort of horse that I don't know. He could end up shorting up. But anywho, plenty of talk about the Ballymore. We don't need to do any more. We will move on now to the Festival Novices Chase.